We finally had a coach actually go on the record, and it was Ryan Walters of Purdue. There's been a lot of coaches quoted as anonymous sources. So what do you make of the latest twist in this case?
Well, I'm glad he went on the record. That's, at least he went on the record. May cost him on Saturday, but good for him. Look, I think this whole thing has flipped with the Central Michigan videotapes. And I think when you're dealing with what coaches say, opposing coaches, they're irate. There's no question. And they have reason to be. But they also aren't really following every bit of the story. They're not necessarily looking at the long-term ramifications, how the procedures work, all those things. But they're sitting there going, wait, Michigan's got a guy on opposing sidelines. They might have like secret glasses. Like, what is going on? And it's understandable because Connor Stalions' behavior going to that sideline is absolutely outrageous. It's almost like he was trying to get caught, or he's just daring to be. Look what I can get away with, because it makes zero sense. You could just sit in the stands if he wanted to do what he apparently liked to do and videotape. He was just showing off or something. I don't know. This is not a well person.
That's it's pretty brazen when you think of it to actually dress up like you're an assistant coach of Central Michigan University at Michigan State just to get that edge, or is that just now is he just getting cocky?
That's not a well person. If you're trying to steal the signs, there's 75,000 seats inside Spartan Stadium. You could, or at least half of them, right? When you're doing this, you're asking, this guy has had a mission. I will say this, right? We don't know who knew what at Michigan. I got a hard time believing they're going to uncover some text messages say, hey, Coach Harbaugh, should I sneak into the Michigan State game, stand on the other sideline with maybe no way. Even the other grad assistants be like, dude, you can't be doing that.
But how does he get in? But how does he get onto the sideline without Central Michigan knowing about it? I know Jim McElwain gets up there and says, oh, we're doing an investigation. But it's like, dude, he's right there. Somebody had to let him there and give him the gear. I mean, he's not just wearing the khakis and the polo. I mean, somebody gives him that stuff.
Somebody had to have known. I mean, look, I can understand a head coach being like, I don't pay attention to what's behind me. I am dialed into this game. But he's just standing there next to people. Other staff, wouldn't somebody do when they went to halftime? Did he walk into the locker room with the rest of the team? Was he in there? That's not a big locker room. Anyway, that video enraged the coaches and the ADs. Enraged it. Because anytime there's video, a scandal gets worse. Remember the Ray Rice video?
Yeah, 100%.
Ray Rice thing just went on. Oh, it's not that big. And then all of a sudden the video came out, and it was the biggest story ever because you're like, what the heck? This is the what the heck. So now you got all these coaches, and they're yelling at their ADs. The coaches are yelling at the commissioner. The AD's yelling at the commissioner. Everyone's yelling at the commissioner. Do something. This is blatant and all that. And that's the spot that Tony Petitti of the Big Ten is sitting in the middle. Do you suspend Jim Harbaugh? Do you, something of that nature? Do you come down on a penalty right now, or do you let the process play out? And that is do you hold these people off? You got the whole league yelling that. I don't know. My guess is they might make a move on Michigan and try to suspend Jim Harbaugh at least at some point. Whether that will work, what injunctions and lawyers will be involved.
Yeah,
they already are, and they will be. But this is what's going on because these coaches are like, this is way above anything. And I think anybody would agree what Connor Stalions was doing, speaking onto a sideline and all this other stuff, is completely outrageous. And I don't even know what in the world he was thinking. Because if you were trying to run a clandestine operation, that's not how you do it. You just buy a seat in row 35 and film it. No one knows you're there. You get the heck out of there. Instead, he's doing all these things to basically try to get caught. So because of that, there's immense pressure on the commissioner right now. What will he do? This is where, I hate to come on a radio show. I know it's good for ratings to talk about the Magna Carta. But due process and procedures and things like that, do exist, and there needs to be an element of fairness. It would be Pandora's box for the Big Ten to just jump out, suspend Jim Harbaugh because it feels good right now, because everyone's screaming. Due process always works. The concept is 800 years old for a reason. It works. They shouldn't do it. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying if you're the Big Ten, you got to take a step back and be like, this will end badly, because once you set the precedent that we don't do due process anymore, or if everyone's mad at one coach or something happens, we need to suspend them for this amount, or what if it's half of that crime, do we suspend them for half, all those types of things.
Is it different if this isn't a wildly successful season for Michigan? If Michigan's 4-4 or 5-3, does it change things?
Oh, if this was happening at Illinois, it'd just be funny. I mean, like, everyone would just be laughing about it, right?
But would they act on it, I guess is my question.
I don't know. I don't think even there would be that much heated behavior, right? No. The fact that Michigan has beaten the brakes off everyone for the last 2.5 years, it matters, right? I mean, hey, Connor Stallion shows up, Michigan starts becoming unbeatable. Totally reasonable to say, well, you know, A plus B equals C, and that's what the coaches are doing. Again, it's not that some punishment isn't done here, but you have a process let out. I'll give you an example, right? So right now the NCAA is investigating Michigan, and they're investigating Jim Harbaugh. Because of that investigation, under their rules, Michigan is not allowed to investigate the case on their own. So they have to sit there and wait for the NCAA to conclude its investigation and say, this is what we think happened. Then Michigan can conduct its own look and say, no, we think this happened. And you have a 90-day period, and then you have all this stuff that's been laid out through years, because the NCAA lost a lot of lawsuits. They lost a lawsuit to Jerry Tarkanian on this stuff, right? So you have this process. So Michigan is handcuffed right now. They can't do anything. Yet the Big Ten could come in as a separate organization, and under their bylaws, Tony Petitti say, I think you guys did it. I'm suspending Jim Harbaugh, or I'm doing this, or whatever. I'm banning you for the Big Ten titles, or whatever. And under their clause, Michigan has the right to provide a defense. But since they're not allowed under the NCAA to investigate what their defense might be, they can't give a defense, right? So, and I know this is like deep in the legal weeds, but these kind of things are important, because you may be like, yeah, this is great, Michigan's crashing and burning, all that, but it's your school next, right? It reminds me a little of when the NCAA jumped in on the Jerry Sandusky case and they hammered Penn State with all these sanctions.
Yeah.
And everyone was cheering. Oh, yeah, Penn State, Jerry, they're the worst. And it was like, that is a bad idea. That is not your purview. And because they ended up backing off and agreeing they made a mistake doing that, because what do you do? What do you do with Larry Nassar? What do you do with Dr. Anderson? What do you do with the Ohio State wrestling coach? What do you do with the player that died at the Maryland football pro? What do you do with Northwestern? Anytime you're getting into criminal stuff, like that was a terrible Pandora's box of precedent they were setting up. Every school in the country is going to get busted for all sorts of crazy stuff. So you have to go by the procedures and take your time. That's not fun. That's not good radio. That's not good internet. That doesn't appease Ryan Day or anybody else. But one day it's going to be you in that bullseye, and you need this process to go along. So the Big Ten, I think, would make a grave error jumping on this. I still think they will, but I would advise not to.
Why do you still think they will? Just the pressure?
I think there's so much pressure on them right now. And I think nobody's talking. There's so much noise, and it's funny, right? Look, I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm not a Michigan fan. I'm just not a Michigan fan. So there's some humor, right? The Connor Stallions it's hysterical. The guy's sneaking around, right? But there are other parts of this story that aren't filtering through that noise. Like, consider this. This would be something. If I'm a Michigan fan, you want a sliver of good news. The NCAA, Michigan suspended Connor Stallions right away because the NCAA said, hey, this guy is the focus of our investigation. And you have to suspend Connor Stallions because simply for a competitive advantage, you can't have a guy who might be able to provide this competitive advantage on your staff. The NCAA is almost assuredly, if they found anybody else was working with Connor Stallions on that Michigan staff, whether it's another analyst all the way up to Harbaugh, would tell Michigan this guy's implicated too, and that person would be suspended because the NCAA is trying to create a level playing field for Purdue this weekend, the same way they were for Michigan State a couple weeks ago, and all that.
Right. Nobody
from Michigan has been suspended. So 2 weeks into the investigation, still early, we don't know where this is going to lead, but 2 weeks in, it appears it is reasonable to assume they didn't find anybody else involved, that this guy is a total whack job, running around on his own doing this stuff. That's where we're at 2 weeks in. That could change in an hour. I don't know. But if I'm right now, I think that's an important distinction. I understand strict liability of Harbaugh and all that, but that's more technical on what you're going to punish down the line. It's a much different deal. So they were like, we uncovered text messages from, a group text of the entire staff going, hey, Connor, get up to that Central Michigan game and wear those sunglasses, right? It's different. So there are parts of this story that have been developing that aren't bad for Michigan. But if you're the Purdue football coach, are you hearing that? And, you're just seeing that video on ESPN going, oh, my God, this is outrageous. So that's the job of a commissioner, to step back and say, hey, where are we here? I can't walk us down off a cliff here. I got to look at all the different stuff, what's fair, what's not. That's why that's what I think should be done. But he's getting berated by everybody. Yeah. Do something.
Dan, appreciate the time as always and the insight. And of course, you can read Dan's stuff on Yahoo and listen to my favorite podcast, the College Football Inquirer. I'm sure you guys do a great job. Thank you, Dan.